We have a great evening planned for you. On behalf of the Sasaki Foundation Board and staff, I want to welcome you here with us. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the board chair of the Sasaki Foundation, Marianne Ocampo.
Thank you, Jen. Good evening, everyone. We're so happy to be with you here today. The Sasaki Foundation has accomplished a lot, but our last pitch night was June 2020 on Zoom. So we're getting reacclimated in the last couple years to in-person activities. But in the last 2 years, I'd say that we continue to celebrate the really impressive and ongoing work of all the design grant winners, a lot of them that you've seen earlier in the presentation that was flipping by. We've transitioned a lot of our program to virtual platforms to continue important conversations on resilience and equity for Greater Boston. In the last couple of years, we've also adapted our summer exploratory experience and design, also known as SEED internship, with local high school students to run safely during the pandemic. And just last week, we actually selected 12 new students who will be part of our summer cohort, which will be in person and hybrid this summer. So we're super excited. We're looking forward to a new season where we have a new home. The Sasaki Foundation and the firm will be migrating downtown Boston. We're super excited to be in our new district and neighborhood and growing our impact within Greater Boston communities. And this evening, we are really thrilled to share with you the results of our fourth call for proposals, and happy to have 7 teams here to join us today with creative pitches. So our theme this year is focused on shared voices, charting a course for community action. The challenges in addressing environmental resilience, displacement, affordable housing, access to mobility choices, meaningful public engagement, and other social equity considerations in planning and design are so broad and they are so complex. They require a shared approach to facilitate all the necessary conversations and deliver actionable solutions. Now, most of these challenges faced by Boston communities we know are not limited to local neighborhoods. Their effects are felt and shared across the Commonwealth and beyond. Multiple futures are at stake, and we can make a difference by acting now. The Sasaki Foundation recognizes the need for interdisciplinary approaches, diverse community voices, and regional cooperation as part of the key drivers to finding shared solutions and creating shared impact. Now, the Hideo Sasaki Foundation started in 2000. Hideo Sasaki was a Japanese American who was a pioneer of interdisciplinary design in practice in the 1950s. Our namesake, he was a leading landscape architect, he was a practitioner, he was an academic. I want to pay tribute to the generations of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders during this Heritage Month who have enriched our Greater Boston communities with their contributions and influences. The spirit of Hideo's legacy lives in our foundation work today. Today we are building the foundation's history, building really off of it, expanding research, expanding programs with overarching themes of design and equity. The focus areas you will hear about tonight are focused on proactive approaches to climate resilience, new models for housing, transit and mobility access, creative community building, health and well-being. We received a near record of 20 proposals addressing all of these topics. The proposals represented 52 organizations and institutions, 9 Boston communities, 3 Greater Boston cities, and 5 gateway cities. We believe as a foundation, as an organization, that design has the power to help address urgent challenges within our generation that include social equity and environmental resilience. It is an agent of change, and yet access to design for communities who may need it, who want it, is really often limited. Therein lies the work of what we do. Now, our work is only possible through the support of many colleagues at Sasaki who are here with us today, so thank you for participating and being here. And before I turn things over to Elaine, I want to take a moment to celebrate our new executive director, Jennifer Lawrence. We're very, very excited and lucky to have Jennifer be part of our foundation family. I also want to extend thanks and gratitude to Anna Sherling, who's helped make this event possible, has been with us from the beginning. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues on the Sasaki Foundation Board of Trustees. We have John Sinkala, Chris Garzi, Meredith McCarthy, who's online with us, Tal Jang, who was in India but was with us in spirit, and then serving as the jury chair this year, Elaine Minji-Limmer, who also serves as the vice chair for the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. I'm Elaine. I am an urban planner with Sasaki and happy to serve as part of the foundation board, and it's been super fun to be part of the jury this year for the design grants. So I just want to briefly introduce the jury, who were all selected for their depth of knowledge and unique perspectives related to the focus areas of the design grants call this year. So we have Julian Edgerman from Tufts University, Alensa Michelle from Powerful Pathways, Nick Kelly from the Boston Housing Authority, Alice Brown from Boston Harbor Now, and Kate Mangoya from Gonwick Somerville. So for the rest of the evening, we'll be following the 5-minute rule. So every team will have 5 minutes hard stop to present, and then the jury will have 5 minutes of Q&A. John over here will be holding up a 2-minute and 1-minute warning for us. And if you go over, he'll start shouting so that you have to stop talking. All right, so with that, I will invite up the first team, DIY Lowell, to go ahead and come up. And for all of the following teams, as soon as you kind of see your name pop up on the screen, please feel free to come up and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Excellent. So I'm going to do my best to explain both what DIY Lowell is and what our proposal is in less than 5 minutes. So wish me a lot of luck. DIY Lowell is an unincorporated grassroots community group. We started about 6 years ago with a mission to help community members make small-scale projects and events happen. Tactical urbanism. Making small things to try and inspire bigger changes. And our mission really has 3 goals. One is a traditional technical urbanism goal, to build lasting, exciting civic improvements, to really do systematic changes with small experimental projects, to pilot them and start them out. Second, to strengthen engagement skills. So instead of hiring professionals or kind of doing it all ourselves, we ask the community to do it themselves. So we help form project teams and give them resources and skills to co-create these projects so that they can learn those skills and use them in the future. Finally, we talked about 40 people, 40 community leaders when we first started DIY Lowell, and we realized one of the critical concerns was that Lowell is ridiculously diverse. There's more than 70 languages spoken in our public schools. We've got young folks, old folks, folks from different backgrounds, and they didn't mix, they didn't talk, they didn't work together very much. So that's another goal, is trying to get those connections going. So without further ado, our team is, first of all, me. I'm a co-founder, an urban planner. I'm going to help with assistance and connections to institutions during this project. Aurora is also a co-founder, been with me for 6 years on DIY Lowell, and she will connect with communities because that's her specialty. Alexis, who's going to probably be answering like 90% of the questions, because she's really going to be the one doing the design of the program on this. She's going to be really putting it together and implementing it. And finally, we've got 2 we're supposed to have 4 people, so we mentioned Amanda, but really we have 5, because we have co-chairs Laura Tavares and Amanda Flores, who are going to help us from the board perspective. And so what do we normally do? Because I want to start out with that and then talk about what we want to do. We start out with hiring a street team, multilingual, young people, teenagers, and college-aged people, go out into the community, ask people for those tactical urbanism and event ideas. If people have really huge ideas, we try to work with them to come up with what could be a small bite-sized idea. We put those all up for a vote. Anyone who pledges to help to be on one of those project teams can vote. We talk about the winners at a community idea summit where we bring together nonprofits, experts, things like that so that they can all form action plans for the project teams. And then finally, after the summit, each ideas working group gets technical assistance from DIY and from nonprofits and things. And so since 6 years, we've had 200 community ideas, 140 people on these project teams, 16 projects and events have happened, and we've had about 3,000 participants in events or seeing the artwork or things like that. Just for some examples, we had a domestic violence survivor gallery of hope with artwork by or inspired by survivors. We had a Visualize Lowell's Black History Trail, where we did pop-up history signs, a Juneteenth event, artwork by Black artists. And we had a Points of Light where we used the common themes of light and water to have a festival that became an annual festival to bring people together and also prove that you could use the canals for more than just looking at. But okay, here's the proposal. Here's the challenge. Lowell, as you can see, this is from the 2020 census, a majority minority, and a really large population of mostly Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Spanish speakers, Khmer speakers, white people. We don't reflect that yet. As we mentioned, language, a lot of immigrants. So the proposal is to do focus groups with Spanish-speaking, Khmer-speaking, African-American populations, tabling at community events like the Puerto Rican Festival and Southeast Asian Water Festival, do one-on-one interviews with community leaders, and work closely with some of the organizations that we've been working with before, but in a more intentional way to design a program that is more culturally competent and really speaks the language, not just literally speaks the language, but you say tactical urbanism, people aren't going to get it. So how do we say that to folks? So we want to create that program, design it in early 2022, implement it in 2023, hire a street team, and make other connections in 2023, and then those implement the program, and then hopefully the people's creative projects will happen 2023 to 24.
Thank you so much. That was an impressively fast last minute of presentation. I want to invite Julian to ask the first question.
Is this working? Oh, it is working.
It
right.
is.
Yeah, great project, great ideas. Are you the right people to be doing this?
So I can understand that question. We are a visibly white-led organization, but I think that is what makes this all the more important. There are not a ton of community organizations that are focusing on building ideas from the ground up. So there isn't a lot of empowerment for those lower power holders within the Lowell community. And so the point is to create a pathway. And so if we can utilize some of our social capital to help build that pathway, it'll make it better.
And could you, you talk about your street teams, could you use those street teams to perhaps bring people on board into your organization?
So that is the original model of the street team. So the street team usually would be out there in community events helping me to collect ideas. So the entire premise is that they are supposed to be there connecting with those community members and trying to entice them in a culturally responsive and an accessible way via language. We do try to focus on bilingual capacity within our street team.
Great. Final question.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
I would just add really quickly also that we have had people join us from the street team on the board afterward. So we've specifically tried to pull them into leadership after working with them.
Great, good. Final question, metrics of success?
So we have had a lot of projects, even just over the last 2 years during the pandemic, that have been monumentally successful. This has been a very challenging time, as everyone in this room knows. So to have shown success during that challenging time, having effective projects that have recruited many community members to participate or attend them, has really bolstered some of those numbers, which I do not believe are reflected in our most recent data, but should be.
But what we're trying to do is get basically our participants, project team participants, to more closely. The closer it matches Lowell's demographics, the more successful we are. And the other thing is we do entrance and exit surveys where people rate what they want to learn and what they want to achieve, and then whether they've achieved that or not. So better measures of that.
It's okay. I don't think I necessarily
You're
need a
projecting
microphone.
perfectly fine.
But you mentioned that you're trying to engage community members to be a part of this process. Can you tell us a little bit about some ideas you have around how to make sure that this will be a community co-design process?
So our entire model is community designed. Every project that we run is an idea that has been submitted from the community. Whether or not that's a project that a community team is actually completing, or we've held that idea knowing it's a need in the community and we can later enact that using that model, everything is designed from the bottom up. We don't take control in this situation. My main priority is empowering the other people to feel confident and competent with leading the project forward so that interference from my perspective is limited. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for your great presentation. How, being in the incubator, will you use the funding and the time to really create a more inclusive project? How do you think being here specifically will help you do that?
So we did apply for a $2,500 exploratory grant to be able to host one-on-one sessions with community members, community forums, so that we can be engaging the community and finding out what it is that they need in order to become more involved. This isn't us trying to pick the right answer and then enact that. We want to make sure that they're saying, no, this is what we need, and we're respecting that.
We also, I think, would really value the Sasaki Foundation, the expertise that comes from reaching out into very different types of communities in Boston and other areas on how to co-create things. We're co-creating a program in this case, and a program to co-create designs, so it's a little circular, but that's part of what we'd be looking for.
I would note that tactical urbanism typically reflects changes in the built environment. Do you feel like as you work with more diverse communities, they're tackling issues that you're like have to piece together the built environment component, or do people come to you with projects that have that clear aspect?
So it kind of depends. So because we're on the smaller side, oftentimes we'll get people who will come in with these large, grandiose ideas, and oh my gosh, I would love to see that happen in the Lowell community. Do we have the capacity to complete that? No. So that's the thing that Chris was talking about, where we kind of work with them to like break that down, and how can we break that down into the smaller steps, what is manageable now, and what could be like a long-term intervention.
We definitely use tactical urbanism broadly. Sometimes it looks more like a campaign or something like that.
I would add briefly, is there anyone else from Lowell here? Lowell is not an especially brave city in terms of trying urbanism ideas. So things that might seem like they wouldn't be especially bold, sometimes we've been able to impress folks with, oh, like you actually could turn a parking space into a pop-up park. And even though that's something that people have been doing for like decades, sometimes it's the first time that something like that has been tried in Lowell, and we kind of have to see it to believe it in Lowell, I would say.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hi, everyone. Too often in the design of our built environment, young people are left out of the conversation. And yet, they not only occupy the same spaces that we do, they have a great deal to say about it. They offer creative perspectives that reveal both inadequacies and opportunities in the architectural world designed by and largely built for adults. What would the world look like if it were designed by younger members of our community? And what would community-engaged design process look like if it were fueled by the talent, passion, and vision of these individuals? Architecture for Public Benefit has partnered with Aaron's Presence to address this very problem, to begin to develop a new blueprint for youth-led design. I'm Hana Hauzi, founder and principal of APB, and this is my partner, Matthew Okazaki. Architecture for Public Benefit is a Boston-based benefit corporation with a mission to bring the power of design to everyone. Our office is focused on collaborating creatively with mission-driven organizations and nonprofits.
Hi, my name is Leah Okimoto. I'm the founder and executive director of Aaron's Presence, a nonprofit youth program that empowers over 400 kids a year to get engaged in their communities, starting with their own unique ideas to impact others. We have worked with APB for the last 2 years as they've designed our annual reports and even started meeting with some of our teens about possible built projects like a thrift store to support their ideas and also our program. At Aaron's Presence, everything that we do is initiated and led by our primarily middle school aged youth. But as they get older, they really need more opportunities to keep discovering their interests and developing their skills for the future. However, most of our youth do not have the social network to even know where to start to be able to explore careers like architecture and design. This proposal is a really creative, hands-on way for them to collaborate with professionals in the field, and it's also perfectly aligned with our mission of helping youth see their lives in terms of what they have to give and contribute to their communities.
So with this project, we'll be investing in the skills young people need to become stewards of their built environment and leaders capable of shaping the spaces they inhabit.
When a group of our Lowell teens met with APB last summer, they talked about a need for comfortable, safe, and inclusive spaces for young people to come together, to talk, to make and sell art, and participate in community events.
A cohort of Aaron's Presence youth will drive the project from conception to installation. APB will host design workshops to brainstorm, develop ideas, design, plan, and fabricate the prototype. We will also show participants how to create project timelines, develop budgets, and other aspects of project management. While facilitated by APB, ultimately the decision-making, design, implementation, and final outcome of the project will be in their hands. The workshops will be complemented by field trips and educational opportunities, including design charrettes at the Sasaki Foundation with the Sasaki team, and a local trip to fabrication firm Jaywalk Studio. Envisioning this as a scalable model for youth-led design, we're committed to evaluating the methodology itself. We'll document the process, workshops, and presentations, and develop a report on our successes, failures, and best practices to serve as a guide for future youth-led design projects.
In this project, we imagine a flexible, mobile pop-up space that could adapt to Aaron's Presence community efforts on many levels. It could be a shop to sell youth-made art. It could be a station where some of our kids are doing their projects, such as giving out food and toiletries to the homeless people, or a booth at one of Lowell's many festivals. Over time, it could also become a recognizable beacon in the city, elevating the voices of our youth and representing Aaron's Presence in a tangible way. At the community level, this project will expand on the work of Aaron's Presence, giving our youth more meaningful experiences and interactions that could impact their future paths. Our community is incredibly diverse, with 88% youth of color, many from immigrant families from all over Central and South America, Southeast Asia, and Africa.
In a profession known for its lack of representation, we not only hope to support a new kind of pipeline for those interested in pursuing a path in design and planning, but to create a group of designers who reflect the demographics of the communities they are designing for. In order to continue improving the built environment, we must include a broader range of age, experience, ability, and background in the design process. This proposal brings in the perspective, energy, and passion of young members of a variety of cultural backgrounds. By introducing them as full partners in the design process, we not only enrich the discussion and create a more diverse set of solutions, but we also empower these future leaders with the skills and strategies to shape their own cities. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. That was wonderful and exciting. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your process of ensuring a really broad definition of diversity within the cohort so that the needs of traditionally marginalized groups, even amongst younger groups, so people of varying gender identities or levels of ability, so that their ideas are just as valued in that process. What does that process look like to make sure that there's equity in how that diversity is brought up through this program?
I could
that. As I mentioned, our community of youth is really diverse, and 88% youth of color. And so what we would do is put this out to really all of our teens. I think we would probably target some of our older teens for this project to start with, and also anybody that we know of that is interested in design and architecture specifically. And that group would be diverse just by the nature of our youth community. So if we were able to assemble a group of 6 kids, I can guarantee they know Lowell, and our youth are from all over the world, and speaking so many different languages and bringing so many cultural backgrounds. And so any group that we have, when we have our office hours on Tuesday, our group comes from a wide range of cultural backgrounds. And so any group that we would assemble for this would definitely reflect that.
I can ask a question. Thanks for your great presentation, really exciting. I'm curious about working with youth in particular in urban design, because most colleges don't even have an urban planning major, let alone youth. So are you guys anticipating any, what are the challenges that you expect with working with really young people around urban design, and how do you expect to overcome those challenges?
I think probably the biggest challenge is us adapting. I mean, thanks. Matt and I are both instructors. We love working and teaching, and we've always found that in the classroom or in the studio, we learn most from our students than we always, they're always surprising us. So I think probably listening would be the best way to tackle any of those challenges. And since this would be really a collaborative process where we do see them as true partners, their perspective of how they engage with and understand the city is something that we want to learn from. At the same time, we can contribute our training, our knowledge on how we develop something, how we start from an idea and sort of conceptualize it and materialize it. So we really are hoping for a true exchange on both sides.
Having a 15-year-old daughter, I know that communication is via Snapchat, TikTok, and all those other things. What's your social media strategy?
Well, they spoke about an Instagram wall where they're like, oh, there needs to be something where we can draw people in, because if there's a good Instagram background, then that will get people. So we don't have a strategy. They'll give us the strategy.
Right. Okay.
I think we're too old for that.
Yeah, it's definitely already been discussed. So they...
I'd be curious to hear you all just speak to sort of the longer term aspirations. What are the things that would mark success for you for this project, for what you imagine for the youth in another 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I guess personally, or Hannah and I are very much interested in this idea of youth-led design, because it is a kind of a whole community of people who really, in some ways, are designed for and not really viewed as partners. And so this is kind of a really interesting model for us to just think about. Like, as Hannah mentioned, we're both teachers, and so this is very much near and dear to us. And then with Aaron's presence, Leah just always is working with kids, and this could be just another opportunity to kind of introduce them to architecture and planning.
And to add to that too, I think it would be really nice to develop some sort of blueprint so that there's a transfer of knowledge where whatever we're learning here, we could sort of share out, so that anyone else interested in sort of engaging with young people in this way could sort of have the tools and the lessons learned that we gather, with this.
I was just going to say quickly that I think, I really love this project because it's hands-on and collaborative, and it ends up being a tangible product. And that's, for something like this that's extra, I think that's really important for the kids. It's not like a book learning type of project.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Invite up the See You in the Future team.
Hello. Hi, my name is Steve, or to be more technical, Stephen Walter. I'm really a proxy for a group of 5 people. You'll see some of our names. Actually, I don't have the clicker, I realize. You'll see who we are in a sec, but they also include these 2 people, Sabrina Dorsonville and George Halfkenny. I will be trying to power through this presentation, and I do just want to note I'm probably going to exude a lot of messiness because I'm subbing out for the lead presenter who was supposed to be here today, but because of COVID and whatnot, she was not able to make it. And so I'm going to do my best, but I apologize in advance. So I want to ask a couple questions and maybe see hands in the room. Who here is familiar with the fact that the city of Boston has had an organic farm tended to, curated by, and cultivated by members of the recovery, homelessness, and mental health trauma treatment communities? So what we see, I think there were 4 hands that were raised. Okay. How many also knew that there was once a dedicated performing arts space for the same intersecting populations that I just mentioned, people struggling with homelessness, active addiction, and mental health crises? Nobody raised their hand. Who here has heard of Long Island? So those 2 slides that we just showed are 2 of the resources that existed on this campus called Long Island that went away in a day. And so there's a lot of media, a lot of narratives that are out there around the crisis that occurred when this crucial resource went away. And so our project is in part trying to set a context for what the narrative that gets lost in the shuffle a bit, and try to reposition who is actually telling the story of what happened there, and what the future holds. And so who here also has heard of Mass and Cass, or the methadone mile? It's often called that. So Long Island, in addition to the many resources and the very creative uses that we just saw, there were 800 people living in some sort of transitionary housing on that island when on one day they were forced to evacuate every single person because of a negligence and carelessness toward the one bridge that connected that island to the mainland. And this island is not without its controversy, but and it has quite a horrid past going back centuries. But for many people over the past 75 years, they will say that having a respite, a sanctuary, to get away from the people, places, and things that may be triggering, whether it's their active addiction, a trauma that they experience living on the street, whatever it happens to be, this island was a sanctuary, and it was lost in a day. And 800 people had nowhere else to go. And in so many ways, Melnia Cass, Mass Ave, was like a vacuum. This is an area that 100 years ago was a bay. It was the South Bay. It was not land. When it became land, it was immediately zoned industrial. And ever since then, this has been an area where gas companies, industrial, commercial entities have sort of owned this particular area. And of course, it exists in this liminal space between much more historic and defined neighborhoods of Roxbury, the South End, Andrews Square, Upham's Corner. And so because perhaps of the lack of prying eyes, this is the place where many people who were dispossessed of what they had on the island, this is where they ended up. And because the public realm of this area has not been designed for human beings, these are the images that we see. So our project, we've just sort of gone through a bunch of the media narratives that are out there. So what our project hopes to do is to take a fundamental unit of so many recovery communities, trauma-informed work, and other psychosocial supports, to take that and embed that into a public realm that is more caring for people. And that fundamental unit is the story, is creativity, the ability to tell one's own story, the ability to imagine what a future might hold for that person. And so See You in the Future is about trying to embed into the public realm of Mass and Cass new forms of storytelling, new ways where people can connect, form relationships with each other, in part to repair what was lost when the island closed, but also to adapt and completely reimagine what the public realm looks like. And so I just want to real quick just say that this is our team, way over time. And with our team, a base of all of the work that we're doing is situated at something that's called the Engagement Center. The Engagement Center is a space that already exists, that our team has been working on since 2017. It's a space for care. It was once this storage shed. We tried to make it a humane place that people can just be, even if they're not ready for services, just to feel human, again, outside of the elements. We've programmed it, we've continuously iterated on it, but it's one single space. And when it closed, as it did recently due to a rash of violence, this is what the public realm outside looked like. And so what our project aims to do is to restart the storytelling process and try to begin to build out from that public space that we've created to this public realm of mass and cast. So really bad on timing there, I apologize, but Q&A.
Thank you so much. I'm going to invite Alensa to ask the first question.
So this is a very interesting project because of your target audience. You described your engagement center, but can you tell us a little about how you seek to engage people?
Yes. Ooh, happy to. So just as Steve said, we've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years designing this physical space that has brought together the communities of people that we're hoping to engage. And even though we're looking to sort of focus on the Mass Gas area, we know that the Engagement Center becomes this epicenter that we can have those conversations. We've practiced through different sets of programming how to have conversations and really show up, embed ourselves with this community of people, and think about what arts-based ways we can have a different conversation. And so over the course of the last few years, we've already started to try and figure out how we tell a different set of stories of what's happening there. And what we're finding now is that, we know that this conversation can go beyond that physical space, right? So we're talking about the public realm rather than that one particular space. And so hopefully that answers it, but yeah, we have those relationships. We're hoping to expand those relationships. We are in constant conversation with a lot of service providers that are in that area, that are working with folks, whether it's cleanup crews with the Newmarket Business Association, or working with partners sort of in that area who do sort of other really creative work. We definitely have a group of people we expect to engage further. So one of the, I think, things that we're hoping we can sort of sort through the support of this particular organization is really trying to figure out those legs of where these stories can go. I think so much of the work that we've done has been really centered on the self and really giving people a space so that they can sort of navigate where they're at, tell their own story. And we really think that that's important, but we also know that there's so much stigma that surrounds both the area, the people, and so we recognize that part of the storytelling work hopefully will allow us to actually make those things public, and do that with the consent of folks, do that through paid opportunities with folks. And I don't want to take up all the space, but yeah, but we do have a lot of intention to make sure that it's not just a conversation that's happening in a really insular way, but that we're sort of making the pathway for folks to be able to tell their stories out loud and frankly in public as well.
Are you talking to Mayor Wu's people on this, given that there's so much going on? This is a great project, and I think you could amplify it through some of the work that she's doing.
Yeah, I know half the group is giggling because I'm one of Mayor Wu's people.
You are?
Yeah,
right,
no,
okay.
No, all to say is that, so in my capacity with the city, it's been really great trying to sort of lean on artists and creatives. I'm also an artist myself, and just know and hold that we have so much that we can offer to really changing the way that we interact with space, interact with each other. And so I'm having that conversation. I'm trying to support that work, but I also know that there's a lot that needs to happen, and there's a lot of voices that still have yet to be heard. And even, again, saying, well, we've done this for the last 5 years, but there's so much that that I think needs to be amplified, and not just coming from us, but really allowing folks the tools to be able to do that themselves.
Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program on that list of partners. I know they're located right there on Mass Ave. Can you tell us a little bit more about how they would participate in this project?
Yeah, so I'll say that Boston Healthcare for the Homeless was one of the core partners with the Engagement Center. So from the day that that physical space opened, they were the sort of nursing, sort of medical provider there. And so they continue to be a part of that. And as we sort of think about the who in this project, we know that we're talking about the staff that are in the Engagement Center. We know that we're talking about those nurses that are in the Engagement Center. We're talking about the outreach workers that work around the Engagement Center. We're talking about the business association that, right? We're talking about the guests. And so when we think about storytelling, we are trying to really be thoughtful and center the people who are obviously experiencing the most, but we also know that that sort of bleeds into really thinking about the people who are caring, right? And so much of see you in the future is really about that statement of like, how do we all sort of aim towards seeing each other and seeing each other tomorrow, right? So.
Time is up. I'll ask you a question later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Hello, everybody. I got to bend out a little bit here. My name is Jarrell Ferguson. I'm the Community Outreach Manager for Speak for the Trees. I'm joined by Natalie Merline, who's our TerraCore service member, and our Executive Director, David Meshalam. So our slide deck today is about sharing community tree stories, the power of trees in building healthy environments. Oh, sorry. All right. So overview, trees play an important role in building healthy communities through environmental benefits. Trees reduce air and water pollution. Through economic benefits, trees are also shown to reduce energy cost in the summer and even in the wintertime. And the social benefits are bringing communities together to have healthier communities. I don't know which way to put this in. That way, okay. Through a small environmental justice grant through the EPA, Speak for the Trees is working to have communities recognize, share, and celebrate their tree stories. And here are our project partners and our community partners.
So we have a process that we have set up through 5 stages to collect these stories and bring them all together. So the first stage is learning. So we want to learn about people's relationships to trees. How do they think about trees? How do they view trees? And so that's through 2 main processes, and that's first story sharing, and that's the bulk of what we're doing here. And so first we're working with Everyday Boston to have a story sharing workshop to empower people to share their stories about trees. And then we also have a survey we've created to provide context to those stories and also gather some more information about how people think of trees if they do. So then that leads us to the second part where we're educating people as well. So part of that survey is figuring out what people are interested in with regards to issues about trees and the environment. And so that's where our partners at BU Urban, we're working with some trainees there, come in and they will be part of that conversation with regards to what these communities that we're working with want to learn more about. And so the 3 communities right now are Dorchester, Mattapan, and East Boston. And so we're also working with American Forest, who will come in and talk about their tree equity score so that can be part of the planning process of these story sharing and walks. And then the third stage is developing. So working with community members to bring all these stories together into walks that they can lead for their communities. And so that can be, what stories do we want to highlight? Are there specific trees or parks or blocks that we want to show off or talk more about on these tree walks? Fourth is capturing, and so that's where our partner Envision comes in to video these stories along the way. And then 5th is bringing it all together, the videos, the stories, the survey into artifacts, which I'll hand it off to David to talk more about.
This is where we see Sasaki coming in. We have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of data we have stories, we have walks, but we want these artifacts to live beyond just of that single community walk. So I sort of scoped together what that might look like a little bit in the process. We have 3 parts to our EPA grant: the stories, the walks, and the data that link together. But we are looking to design beyond that in a way that continues community engagement beyond the end of the grant, and that allows residents to continue to share, to continue to learn, to sort of close that loop. So that might be QR codes, that might be some type of digital medium that lives on our website. It might be pamphlets that people can pick up at their local community center to learn about walks. So that's our proposal. And I think maybe we're even under time. Thank you.
Thank you for that proposal, and congrats on getting done early. I have 2 questions. One of them is about the stories we tell about trees as we walk through neighborhoods. What does that look like in a neighborhood where there aren't as many trees? How do you find a story about the lack of something?
It's a fascinating question because I think there's also the history of trees that used to be there, or a memory of trees, right? So the emptiness might signify a story in and of itself. And Boston as a city and these neighborhoods are cities that have seen immense change in the past, generation. So I think there's an opportunity there to reimagine or to remember, right? Because trees have history. But it's a provocative question, and we're looking to learn and to see what emerges from, I hope, what's hopefully like an organic process.
Great. And the second part, I think you guys have a really great idea in terms of bringing in different language speakers, different language groups. One thing I've experienced with outreach via some social media is that different language speakers use media in different ways. Do you guys have any preliminary hypotheses about how to reach folks who are speaking these different languages and where they might be posting or sharing their own content?
I'll say that we're working closely with our community partners who are going to help us scope all that out. They know the people best in their communities. So we haven't gotten to that part of the process yet, but as soon as we, partner, get with them, and then they'll let us know the best ways of reaching and, sharing information with their bilingual speaking community members.
So thanks for your great pitch. In addition to the immense benefits of communities understanding their trees, can you talk about also what are the positive externalities of that on, planting more trees, preserving existing trees? What are some of the other longer-term outcomes in terms of trees that you guys are, and the built environment you guys are excited about or focused on?
Start looking at each other here.
You're the boss.
Well, I mean, there's building community and bringing people together, but there's also recognizing that there's hope in trees, right? And there's an opportunity to reimagine not only, to remember the past, but to reimagine the future. And we do a lot more at our organization than just tell stories. We plant trees, we give away trees. We see this process as a way to deepen our relationships in certain communities, to become a trusted partner, but mainly to understand, because I don't think we can be effective until we fully understand or better understand those complicated relationships that people have with their built environment. And only then, I think, as those relationships strengthen over time, can we go to that next space. Because I think trees are really complicated. Not everyone has the same, different cultures, different communities have different valences to trees.
A very short question, but an important question. How are you ensuring that equity is going to be embedded throughout your process?
Of course, Alenza asked that question. We've been intentional about working in EJ communities and working with partners who share the values that we do, the community partners. So that was the first step. we're trying to find ways to make sure that as many voices as possible are invited to spaces where we work. And we're doing that not by coming in, but like Jarrell said, by working within those communities. So we're hoping that, I feel like this microphone is going in and out. The intentionality of doing that process will lend itself to a more equitable distribution of opportunities and voices.
I just want to keep pushing on Nick's question a little bit more of why you guys come back to storytelling as a critical piece of, as opposed to, I guess, just focusing on the implementation of introducing more trees. Because I'm curious to hear, thank you for explaining sort of the relationship building aspect of collecting the stories. But can you speak a little bit more to the intended audience and the importance of sharing the stories and the reason why you've come to that as a critical piece of the process?
I mean, part of the reason we've come to story sharing as part of the process is that, when we plant trees in a community that doesn't maybe want them or we don't know very well, those trees aren't going to last. Those trees aren't going to survive because people there aren't going to take care of them. And so that's part of how we got to story sharing, is to figure out those relationships, build those relationships, and hopefully that will lend itself to these trees surviving as well. So that's how we got there.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sophie from Climbable. I'm excited and honored to be with you all tonight talking about the Chinatown Energy Literacy Campaign. We are here to answer Sasaki's call to do two things: proactively address climate adaptation and creatively build community. We know that Chinatown residents need accessible and easy to understand information about the risks and impacts of the climate crisis, how to access essential services in an emergency, and the connection between reliable energy and climate resilience. Our replicable energy literacy campaign will create actionable steps for involvement in Chinatown's clean community microgrid. Run GJC is a collaborative of 9 organizations that has been working on this project since 2016. The Green Justice Coalition is a group of community, labor, and environmental organizations working on a just transition. Run is the technical team, and Climbable serves as the technical translators. Together, we helped found Chinatown Power, which will help build and run the microgrid. We believe in decision-making from the ground up, and that our work must center environmental and community health at every step. Our end goal is equity and resilience in the communities that we partner with. Before I dig too much deeper, I want to explain a little bit about what our microgrid design is. It is local energy generation and local energy storage. So in normal times, the microgrid is smart and communicates with regional energy markets and the regional grid to sell or save energy. In an emergency, the buildings participating in the microgrid can disconnect and go into island mode. This means that lights stay on and essential services like refrigeration for meds, power for ventilators, and elevators for mobility are not lost. Local and reliable energy creates resilience. Chinatown is one of the most culturally rich neighborhoods in Boston, with a strong social fabric that forges the tenacity to resist displacement and racial and environmental disparity. A little under half of residents identify as Asian or Asian American, and the community plays an essential role in preserving and celebrating Asian heritage in the city of Boston. Chinatown is a designated environmental justice community, and not only is climate a threat with the increased risk of flooding and heat waves, but with proximity to one of the most congested roadways, Chinatown has the worst air quality in Massachusetts, and gentrification is rapidly displacing residents. Investing in the microgrid also requires investing in education and community engagement. Access to knowledge empowers, and that is why we are asking for Sasaki's support. Our community microgrid and energy literacy campaign proactively address climate adaptation. Microgrids ensure reliable electricity and community resilience. Energy efficiency and clean tech reduces emissions and betters public health. Our campaign and online resilience hub creatively builds community by creating new pathways for engagement and learning. Climbable knows very well that technical language and complex policies are confusing, and confusion causes disengagement. Also, this is hard stuff for me to understand in my first language, so imagine trying to engage with these topics in your second. 53% of residents in Chinatown speak an Asian language at home, so we know that language equity is an absolute necessity. Our multilingual energy literacy campaign and online resilience hub will enable networking among community members, educate residents about climate and energy issues, and build an understanding of the importance of clean, reliable energy. Access to information about climate risks, energy, and emergency resources is transformative. Climbable's forte is creating community engagement materials that are in plain language and in multiple languages to increase accessibility. Our goal is to provide spaces for community members to participate in decision-making. We will begin by creating a multilingual energy literacy campaign catered to the needs of Chinatown residents. And then we will engage Chinatown residents in interviews on topics of resilience and climate change, essential services, and a just transition. The interviewing will allow us to have a better understanding of what their essential and emergency needs are, which will lead to our creation of an online resilience hub. The online resilience hub will be a home for the energy literacy materials we create, the community interviews we conduct, and will also be a place to access information about the microgrid, emergency shelters, and other essential services. We would not be able to do this in-depth work on community interviews and material development without Sasaki's financial and design support. Thank you so much, and we are excited to answer your questions.
Thanks for that great presentation. I think this is a really exciting idea that could have a lot of really positive benefits for Chinatown. My main question is around the value add of Sasaki's involvement. Specifically, how is the marketing and visualization specifically important for this project? And I'm particularly curious about the digital deliverables. Is there any concern that they may be inaccessible for some folks in Chinatown who are less online than some of our younger folks who are on TikTok all the time?
I'll speak particularly to the second point because that's actually one of the things that I raised when we first started talking about this. I think that the digital campaign is not the totality of our outreach and education effort. It's the specific piece that we're asking for support from the Sasaki Foundation. People in our community communicate in a lot of different ways, different ages, different languages, generations, different people coming from the village versus people coming from the cities. But a lot of people are digitally, like the elderly, especially the elderly that came from the villages are not digitally connected, and that's not how we're going to reach them. But there are a lot of people who are connected, not necessarily to the same social media as English speakers, but to WeChat, which is a very popular Chinese app. And a lot of these things, the things that will be created can be used across different kinds of media. So, yeah.
I was going to say the same thing, that they can be repurposed in other formats as well, but I think one of the key things here is that visualization does help transcend language barriers and can communicate technical or complicated information in a much more succinct, elegant way, and it can be very effective. So. She did that great of a job.
And I was going to say, like when we create images, they don't have to just be digital. We can create images and we can make flyers the old-fashioned way and give them to people, and we can use them, for signs that we put up in different buildings. And a lot of the way that we reach the elderly is just directly, going to each building and having discussion with people when they're sitting outside.
Your follow-up literally answered the question I was going to ask.
I guess, what is the current knowledge of this microgrid proposal in Chinatown? I mean, how well known is it, and what are your metrics for achieving your goals? How many people are you? What percentage of Chinatown are you hoping to educate about this? And then actually get folks on the app, like trying it out? What are your actual metrics?
So when it comes to the microgrid, our conversations have mainly been focused towards the building owners of the buildings in which we'd be installing equipment. Our next steps are then to start outreach to tenants and open up dialogues on how this would help them out.
Well, I would say, I mean, currently what we're focused on is the building owners, because we have to get like energy assessments done. But we did do a whole set of community discussions and workshops and focus groups that led up to the design of the microgrid. I mean, did that reach lots of people? No. You know, we reached, what, 60 people or something like that?
We
no.
did a community survey that was about 200 people.
Oh, okay, 200 people. You know, but there is a core of people. Maybe it grew partly out of that. We're also like more, Sari and I are the newer people involved. Some of our predecessors were doing the earlier community engagement, but there is there are a core of residents of different ages and different backgrounds that are very invested in the microgrid idea. And those are some of the first buildings where we're going to be trying to connect the buildings and also holding building-based discussions to involve residents in designing deciding what are the pieces of the design that they want in their building. But we will be going to do a broader kind of outreach in this next period. And it's not just about the microgrid, although the microgrid is the very concrete program that we're trying to advance. But, you know, in order for people to really understand the microgrid, they have to have like a broader understanding of, of the issues of resilience in general.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm the executive director of Groundwork Somerville, and this is Tati, who leads our youth programs, and we're here to talk to you about Somerville's new urban farm. Do I have to angle this a certain way? Okay, would you like to start by talking about our programs?
Yeah. So to start, we focus on 4 main programs. We have, thank you, our School Gardens program, our Youth Empowerment program. We also have our urban farming and our mobile market as well. So our School Gardens program, we run our programming in 8 public schools, 1 charter school, as well as 1 public library. We run programming for K through 8th graders, and we do a see to taste as well as a hands-on experience programming. So what that means is we want our youth to be able to be out in the gardens, getting their hands dirty, smelling what they're growing, tasting what they're growing, and interacting with that produce as well. And that education is bolstered by their standard education that they receive in school, so what they're learning in math, science, English, history is all married by what they do in the garden. And generally, we also have our staff and volunteers come to support and maintain our gardens as well. And then for Green Team, which I manage, it's a program that is started in 2007. It's run for ages 14 to 18 years old. Our programs consist of at least, if not 100% of youth of color, youth of low income, and youth of immigrant status. In addition to physical hands-on work that they get at the farm and at School Gardens, they also have the chance to work on projects in leadership, justice, and social justice, professionalism, team building, and community engagement as well as general education based in STEAM. On the farm and public facing, the Green Team also does workshops and events surrounding urban agriculture, sustainable environment, and civic engagement. So what that means is we want our youth to be able to take the knowledge and education we're giving them and put it back into their community. And the workshops that we're doing and that they're leading are all education and issues that are faced and based in their communities and by people that they know, if not by themselves.
Oops, sorry, wrong way. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our South Street Farm, which is the only farm, as far as I know, in operation in Somerville. We currently grow over 1 metric ton of produce for the Somerville Mobile Market, which is run by us and the city of Somerville, and distributed to people who need it the most. So we and the city of Somerville drive the produce directly to public housing sites in Somerville and distribute it to families in need. One important thing to note is that the produce that we're growing is all culturally relevant. I've said that so many times today. Culturally relevant produce. So things that people in community groups, recent immigrant communities maybe might not have access to in grocery stores, but is definitely tied to their diet. So that's a service that we're providing. The challenge that we have and what we need your help with is we actually have to move our operations to a new location. Our space is owned by the city. It is about to be taken over by a developer, and the city has found us a new location. So what we're looking for is to help design this new space. I would say more than the produce that we grow and more than just the numbers that we're putting out there, South Street Farm has been a home away from home for countless youth, and it is important to us to make this space friendly and accessible, just like the existing farm. Our youth have mentioned that this space has been a place where they could safely gather during COVID outside and express themselves. It represents to them a place in that really complicated space between home and school that's really important to foster independence for high school students. So having them have that space to be themselves and to learn and grow away from school and away from their families is really important. And our hope and dream would be to have our youth who have such great institutional knowledge of the existing space work with Sasaki to design the new farm space and to have it be a true community gathering space, a place for youth and children to learn and grow together, and a place to produce food for the community that is grown by the community. And that is something that we firmly believe in. And again, just because our youth are so integral to our organization, we're really excited to have them share their knowledge with Sasaki and to talk about the challenges that we've had at our existing farm site and our big dreams for the new space. How am I doing?
7 seconds.
Oh my gosh, 7 seconds. I think we're ready for questions.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about who the farmers are going to be?
Sorry, what was that?
Who are the farmers going to be? Are you going to be the farmers or...?
Yes, so the question was who are the farmers, and it is us. There are 5 members on staff. We all work at the farm together, and then we hire youth from the community to work at the farm as well. So there are staff members from Groundwork Somerville, the majority of which do live in Somerville, and then all of the youth are Somerville-based youth who learn at the farm as well.
And this is probably outside the consideration of this, but have you considered a community land trust for this project?
It sounds like people in the audience think we should. I love that idea. Yes, I would say the new space is a little complicated in that it's owned by the city, so we're working through all of that process, but I do really like the idea, and we do want to grow and expand beyond just this farm because there's a need for more green space in Somerville, and there's a need for more food in Somerville, and we want to be the ones to make it happen.
Okay. And final question, and this is a little bit of self-promotion. Urbanfoodstories.com is a website that I run. Urbanfoodstories.com. Did you get that, by the way? No. And one of the things that one of my students did was found that there's a huge range of global crops grown in Somerville. What are you going to do to ensure that all of that stuff from Southeast Asia, from Africa, is grown at your farm?
Great question. So right now, the members who shop at our mobile market are very, very comfortable telling us what they want us to grow in upcoming years, and we love that. So they come to us and say, hey, have you considered growing Gilo? And have you considered growing amaranth? And we're very happy to fill that need. So we're here to grow whatever food people are looking for. If they can't find it in the grocery store, we really hope that we can be the place to find it.
And I'll say, as someone who had the chance to be both a mobile market leader and now in a more full-time position at Groundwork, we have that position so that continuity can happen. There is someone on the ground at the market talking to customers who's also going to be at the farm growing the food. And the youth are doing that job as well. So we want to make it as community and as local based as possible, and like literally from the ground up. Like the people who need it are doing the work and they're being empowered to do so.
I'd love to hear more.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd love to hear more about the space itself. So what is your vision for the space, and what is the actual deliverable that come out of this? Is it a full design of the building, and what's the funding that you guys would have to actually implement the design?
Great question. So for the space, what we envision is obviously a working farm. It's going to be above ground, and we feel pretty confident in our existing structures. They can all be taken apart and put back together again. They're basically large pavers that break down the space, and then we fill them with soil, so we make these big garden beds. But what we're looking for help with is getting that community aspect, so having community gathering spaces, having more benches, having places for events and workshops, and places for the community to learn. So I think that's kind of the big hope that we have. Like we're very confident in our skills as farmers to design the farm side, but we really want help with that community aspect and getting more people involved from the community to give us their thoughts as well.
I had a similar question about the type of space you mentioned, the cultural relevance. I stumbled on it too, in the produce that you grow, but curious to hear if you feel, what are the ways you feel like that's reflected in your current space, and what are the ways you want to empower youth and design this particular design process to be able to push that further?
Great question. So there's a few different things. So our youth are, again, they've been at this space. A lot of them have grown up with us. We have board members who who were kids in our program and are now on our board, which is really exciting. So we already have a really great feedback loop, and we already stay in touch really closely with people to whom this space matters a lot. So we're looking to them to hear what they want. And again, some of them are like, we want more, we want to be able to hang out here, is what I hear a lot. Like, we just want to hang out. At the end of the workday, it is sometimes very hard to get kids to go home. They like being there, and we just want to make it feel more welcome and make it easier for them to be there too. And that goes to everybody else in the Somerville community. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, just now that I'm in the role where I can quite literally curate the green team, I do it to the best of my ability to make sure I'm serving the youth that need to be served. As a person of color in a position of power, I want to make sure youth of color are also getting the resources they need. And not to say that I'll take an opportunity away from other youth, but if it's brought to my attention that a youth needs our programming so that they can get healthy food and have something to do after their after school day, of course, they'll be a member of the green team. And I think it's important that as people in power, even though we are a small team, we're doing that on purpose. We're highlighting youth of color on purpose, low-income youth on purpose, and giving them those opportunities as well.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca Bowman. I'm the climate justice organizer at Green Roots.
My name is Caroline Ellenbird. I'm the anti-displacement organizer at Green Roots, longtime Comunidades Enraizadas Community Land Trust member, transitioning to full-time staff for the CLT.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Vanegas, and I'm a member of Comunidades Enraizadas CLT, which means Rooted Communities in English. I have lived in Chelsea for almost 25 years. Chelsea is the smallest city in Massachusetts, just across the Tobin Bridge from Boston. We have a lot of people in our small city, but we also have a lot of environment burdens, including very little open spaces. Chelsea is a city of immigrants. Almost two-thirds of us come from other countries. Chelsea is home to various pro-community nonprofit organizations, one of them Green Roots. Green Roots is a nonprofit community-based organization engaged on environmental and social justice, dedicated to improving and enhancing the urban environment and public health in Chelsea and surrounding communities. with more than 20 years of environmental justice and public health victories. Here, see us in action, working hard at the urban farm, advocating for access to our waterfronts, that is canoeing in the creeks, stopping fossil fuel power plant, COVID-19 vaccine and test ambassadors around the city, planting trees to mitigate the heat on different areas. We also engage in anti-displacement. We believe people need to be able to stay in the communities they fight for. And for that reason, Green Roots has been supporting the work of Comunidades Enraizadas CLT. Comunidades Enraizadas is a community land trust, working hard to empower our community by giving formal decision-making voice and determining land uses. A group of Latinx housing activists were looking for ways to root the community. Like I say, Comunidades Enraizadas means rooted communities in English. Basically join forces with Green Roots, whom has helped incubate and launch and support Comunidades Enraizadas into its own nonprofit. Led by a group of mostly Latino immigrants, we have educated ourselves, organized, and networked with greater community. All our members are Spanish-speaking. Our meetings are usually conducted in Spanish. We have been busy because we believe we can do it. That is something that we always say, sí se puede.
So Green Roots is supporting residents in Chelsea in fighting to clean up our environment of our city, to advocate to lessen the unjust burden that we have in so many ways from the environmental justice perspective. However, with that comes a complication, which is, we have in these two questions here, what do you do when the environment that you are working so hard to make more livable then becomes more desirable to people from outside the community, or, and so it operates on two levels here, right? One is, how do we make our city greener without displacing the people who call it home, cleaning up the air, increasing the open space, gardens, all of those things at a citywide level impact it, and also at the individual housing level, right? There's a lot of efforts to try to make homes themselves more sustainable, more healthy, and those changes raise the value of that house. And this is obviously a systemic problem, much bigger than anything we can solve, but the idea of the thank you, the community, okay, oh no, so I'm gonna pass it on to Bianca.
So, yeah, the Comunidades Enraizadas, Community Land Trust, and Green Roots work together on affordable housing issues. And essentially, we had the idea of, when you have a limited amount of space in a community like Chelsea that's only 2 square miles, you're sometimes advocating for affordable housing at the same time as trying to fight for that same space to be green space. So an innovative potential solution that we really want to explore is we have the opportunity through Comunidades Enraizadas to build, and the CLT is already working with the city of Chelsea on designing a new housing development that will be affordable housing permanently. So that's the point of a community land trust, and something that we want to explore since we have this opportunity to build a building from the ground up, completely new, is to explore designing a green roof on that building. So something else that's important about this process is because we are Green Roots, we are extremely used to doing community-based processes and community-led processes when doing any kind of design work. So one of the most important parts of this process is if we're going to have a green roof on an affordable housing building, what does that green roof look like? What is the most important thing that we have access to? Because there are many types of green roofs. And the reality is I'm a community organizer, as are most of us, and we don't have the expertise on what the possibilities are for green roofs. So this project is really to explore what is possible and do that through both community processes and consulting with experts on green roofs for things like, do community members want a place on the roof of their building that has trees? Do they want to have a community garden? Do they just want as much green space as possible? And kind of exploring what that looks like. So this is an example of our intergenerational community-led design processes that we've led this year, for example, for a new green space in an empty lot. And so we just have a lot of really great experience with doing these processes and are looking to explore this exciting opportunity. Thank you.
This is such an exciting project, and it's Chelsea's so small geographically, the 2.5 square miles. It's a really ingenious potential use of space. So I hope you guys are able to dig in really deeply to this. You mentioned your intergenerational processes. Tell me a little bit more about the way in which you are going to, if you were to receive this funding, to connect particularly with the youth that potentially could live in this building or who live in that area who might be really interested in engaging in design processes like this. What would that look like to pull youth in?
Yeah, so I can start on that. In our experience, we luckily have youth organizers that we pay year-round to work with us. So we have organizers that are connected to the Chelsea community from multiple different high schools usually, and they're between age 14 and 18. So often we kind of ask them when they are interested in these projects, and they choose their own projects. So obviously for them, it would have to be something that they're interested in leading, but often they are really, really enthusiastic about projects like these. Additionally, we have a lot of other community connections with youth through our urban farm community and community gardens. We have a lot of connections with youth. Most of our community members are parts of families. So we have at pretty much every single one of our community meetings people that are old, people that are young, people that are pretty much everywhere in between those definitions. So I think that youth are usually a big part of our community processes, as well as people from every other age category. Yeah.
I'm curious, you guys are starting from a premise that there's not enough green space in Chelsea, a premise I would agree with. And you're designing this green roof. Is it intended specifically for the residents of this new building, or will there be a way for people who live nearby to also access it in sort of like a floating park model?
I want to sort of expand it beyond. So we do have the potential of a site. We're partnering with Habitat for Humanity, and there's a site that the city has. We have not secured support for it, but I think we're going beyond. This would be not just for that site, but what is the capacity? So that building probably would be for the residents, I think, because they will own that home, and it would be their space. But that doesn't mean that the community land trust is a very flexible model, and we are the community. The land goes into the hands of the community permanently, and the community then decides what goes on the land. A big priority for Comunidades Enraizadas is housing, resident-led, permanently affordable home ownership, cooperatives, but it's also farms, it's also community spaces, commercial space, so in that setting, it could be a public space.
I have a question regarding political processes. So having worked in Chelsea intimately, I know that oftentimes there are a lot of projects, especially when it involves housing development that involve political navigation. So you mentioned that you've started to work with the city. Can you name other strategies and partners that you're also looking to help navigate some of these on-the-ground bureaucracies?
So Comunidades Enraizadas, the leaders from the very beginning, long before we were a nonprofit or anything else, have been in conversation with the city for years and years. We have very strong advocates in the community and housing and community development, what used to be the planning department, but the city manager, we've met with him many times over the years as well. So we have strong allies. We do need to continue to do outreach with city councilors, and that's going to be important. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund got us a home rule petition, or the city got a home rule petition, so that any property taken by tax lien, the city council can give it to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They have full discretion over how to dispose of their land. So we've presented to them, we've talked to them. I think everyone's excited in the city. In the future, there's definitely some political navigating to happen, but I do think we've set a lot of pieces in place that make it likely we can succeed with this one.
Really quick last question, or maybe there are more. I love the idea. I think it brilliantly gets past the problem of green gentrification. I want to build off Alice's question about what this is for exactly. There's this building that you guys are eyeing, but I think it could be really exciting as a model for affordable housing development generally in Chelsea. So I'm wondering, as outcomes, if you've thought about this as both a site-specific and a model for pitching for other developers, and how you've thought about integrating developers into this project who may try to cut this later on for cost.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up because I think we're also really looking at it as a pilot project essentially, and we're essentially looking to explore within this realm, within this development specifically, how to get a green roof on this specific building, but we also want to be able to expand those ideas to other buildings that already exist, retrofits, as well as, because kind of connected to the previous question, because we have all these connections with the city and we have connections with a lot of other community-based organizations, both in Chelsea and in East Boston, we really want to share the wealth of knowledge and have this be a pilot project. And with projects like this too, this is a cool block pilot project that we've been working on as well, and we're doing the same thing with this. We're basically throwing a bunch of heat mitigation strategies all on one block and basically telling as many people as possible about it to be like, you can do this too. So I think that's definitely in our view as what's an important part of this project.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you to all of the teams. Let's give all of them a giant round of applause. So it's now your chance to tell us which one is your favorite. So you'll see a poll pop up on the screen to vote for the fan favorite. So you can either text that number or visit that website on your phone and pick the letter for the team you want to vote for. And as people are voting, I just want to invite all of the teams up here for a quick group photo. And yeah, please feel free to hang out, meet each other, talk about how awesome community land trusts are, and enjoy some more beer. Thank you.